Go ahead. To start with the intro, I guess. I think about like if someone is new to this particular, I'll send it to people that I know. So it's like they don't know anyone else here. So everyone says their own bios and or you do the intros. I think.
Kai Chang.
Kai Peter Chang.
Well, Kai Chang is fine. It's fine.
Okay, Kai Chang.
Okay.
Go on.
Don't you dare forget that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Ladies and gentlemen, he's here. He's ready. Kai Chang.
Howdy.
Legend.
How are you doing?
Welcome to the
Fantastic.
Welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you who don't know, Kai is a very good friend.
Yes.
We met through Twitter originally. Any opportunity I take to see you, I jump at it because it's always good conversation, as we're going to have right now.
Yeah, let me tell you guys, dude, 5 minutes into it, me and Logan were like, we love this guy. We fucking love
It's
this guy
on
already.
for the podcast.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. And for those who aren't familiar, like, tell me a little bit about you guys as well.
Yeah, why don't
Start with
take
me?
it away.
Well, my name is Sa, apparently. No, I'm just kidding. Saeed Ashur. I do media. I do video work, as you can see. And I do a lot of just production, things like that. Lately, I've been doing a lot of product photography. But yeah, I'm getting more and more into storytelling and things like that. And I want to kind of move into the Hollywood industry.
Yes.
Ish.
All right.
Yeah, what about you?
And then Zaid Dahaj, competitive soccer player on the road to hopefully playing professionally. That's the goal. Writer, and I'd like to consider myself a philosopher. So a lover of wisdom. No ego attached to that label, but that's who I am.
Does Aristotle ring a bell?
I like how Kai's interviewing us on our show.
Hey,
who are you guys?
Who are you guys? Yeah.
Welcome to my show, everyone. I'm so glad you guys all gathered here.
Episode 51.
Yeah.
He's like China. He's hijacked us. He's hijacked us.
Why do you deserve? Why do you belong here? Tell me about your weaknesses. And where do you see yourself in 5 years?
What about your
Oh,
strength?
man.
Yeah. What are your strengths and weaknesses? What do your former bosses, say about you? I don't understand you.
What's something that shakes you to the core?
How about you, Mr.
What
Logan?
keeps you up at 2 a.m.? No.
Dum, dum, dum. That's the name of the thing. That's the name of the thing.
Oh, he said it.
we have great dad jokes here, by the way.
Do I have to do last name as well?
No, it's
Sure.
fine. However you want to
Well,
go.
he was
by.
so regal. He's like, I'm Zaid Dahaj.
However you want to do
First
it.
of his name.
I'm Logan Cypherus. I do music, digital art, pretty much anything that you throw at me, I'm going to figure out, try to get it done. Realistically, primarily music though. That's what I originally went to college for, Berkeley School of Music. Shout out.
Hey.
Only there for a semester, then I did.
Hey.
Get the book out of
But yeah,
We still got it.
music for just people's songs, videos. I mean, anything that Saeed wants. I mean, I made the music for the podcast.
Excellent.
Yeah, I made the logo that's there.
Excellent.
The one that's hanging up over here.
Mr. Design Man.
Yes, sir.
Creative.
Yeah. What about you?
Let's see.
Who are you?
I have a number of identities, I suppose. Depends on how far back you go. The most useful thing, I think, most recently would be kind of commentary, personal development, a fan of personal development, and thinking a lot about leveling up. So various phases of my life, I've had to think about how to rebuild myself, whether it's coming to the U.S. as a kid, and then watching my own parents kind of go through their own immigrant story. My father is an orphan, and fascinating story on that end was that my grandfather on my father's side was a triad enforcer, so which meant that he was his job was offing people on his kill lists, on his boss's kill lists.
Whoa.
And that was my graph. On my back when I was single, my dating profile was like, because of this, I'm a quarter gangster, which is actually the perfect combination.
It's in my
You don't want an
DNA.
actual, right? It's like literally like it's my DNA. But you don't want an actual gangsters in and out of prison all the time.
The perfect balance.
Right? It's
Yeah.
perfect balance, right? He's a quarter gangster, but also has health insurance and a 401k. It's like this, and health, this is good credit rating. I mean, it's just enough danger to be exciting, but not dangerous enough that you have to constantly be like worrying about bail money and his rivals coming by and killing him over some blown drug deal. So it's a good combination, I think.
I
All the
love
perks
it.
of being a gangster.
Yes, exactly.
Fascinating.
It's the sort of min-maxing. So I guess that's the thing that I've found most of my life thinking a lot about is there's the term min-maxing of how do you get them put in the minimum amount of input to get the maximum desired results.
Yeah.
And so that's something I've been thinking a lot about in terms of both in terms of life, interpersonal, business, ways to fitness as well. Like, it's not, the point isn't to live in the gym.
Yeah.
What can I do to exercise the correct way to stimulate muscles to get the results that I want, which is if you want to be a soccer player or a athlete or any sort of athlete, is like what the performance of what you really want. Not I want to live like 6 hours in the gym and do a gazillion sets and be so tired. You get
Be
these
a
guys
gym
to do
bro.
that, right?
Yeah.
Like what are the combination of movements and food and and rest that gets me the desired results? And
That ties in with, I'm sure you're familiar with the Pareto principle.
Pareto, yeah.
Yeah, ties into that. I mean, you really have to view every area of your life with that lens.
Right.
If you want good results.
For people that don't know, you might want to elaborate.
Yeah,
on
what is that
Yes.
principle?
So the idea is 80% of your results come from 20% of the effort. So not all activities are equal.
Yeah.
Certain activities, when leveraged properly, can get you most of the results that you're looking for.
Mm.
And that
Interesting.
goes back. I don't know who Pareto was.
Pareto is an
Specifically-
economist, an Italian economist that talked about this. I think that was more talking about things like results in terms of 80% of, like in a business, 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your clients. 80% of, a lot of things kind of go into that sort of, and it's not precisely 80-20, but it's just the general idea that a lot of your results come from a small minority of,
Yeah.
and if you don't pay attention, you may end up spending a lot of your time devoting equal amounts of time to everything, not realizing that 80% of the time you're wasting your time.
Mm.
You're chasing clients that are going to be marginal at best and gobble up a lot of your bandwidth. Meanwhile, the very profitable, lucrative clients are being neglected. And so if you can intentionally dive into that energy, it'll be much better. Go ahead.
Got you.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. I was
you
just trying to move the mic a little bit.
Oh,
closer to
there we
the-
go. Thank you. I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah.
No, let's get this thing a little bit.
I can
It
see
usually
the signals
happens
from here,
all the
which
time.
is
Just get it
It
dialed.
looks
Yeah.
fine.
Yes, get it dialed in. It's all good. But
Zaid, can you tighten that for him, please? Just a
is
little
that
bit.
is it gonna drift
yeah.
down?
No, other direction.
Oh, is it there? Okay.
other direction. No.
Let's get a little twisted here on the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
That should be good.
That'd be good.
All right.
So what are some things that you're really interested in currently, or what are some ideas that that have been catching your attention lately?
Well, now, oh, good.
What's tantalizing to you?
What's tantalizing?
Oh,
It's all about the tantalization.
well, now I think being at a older age than all you youngsters, I think thinking about family is something. Creating not just like a successful partnership with but also like thinking about generationally. Like
Mhm.
what is it like what's important about not just having a healthy child, but what decisions can we make right now that will create good results 3, 4, 5 generations from now?
Yeah.
We hear a lot of like extremely successful, very smart people that create a business empire and whatnot, and their kids are kind of like coasting off of dad's money, and the grandkids are completely like drug addicts and whatnot. It's like, what's the point of accumulating money you're not going to spend in your lifetime? Typically, it's, I'm going to leave it to my kids. Well, if you leave it to your kids and they have no guidance, it's going to get pissed away and ripped off by them anyway. So
Mhm.
what can you do right now that can, because there are families that are successful and are able to preserve and maintain their, not just their financial wealth, but also interpersonal,
Yeah.
and that's something that I've been thinking a lot about. I mean, before we got on the podcast, we're talking about one of my favorite novel series, which is actually, there's a movie coming out now, is Dune. In that novel, which was written in like 1965, they were talking about these dynastic families that have ruled entire planets for hundreds of years. So these are definitely families that are very successful in being able to create children of privilege that are able to grow up access to infinite resources, and yet they don't get spoiled. They were able to be thoughtful, command the respect of their low-ranking troops, and then find an appropriate partner, create another child that is also steeped in that cultural lore. And then unsuccessful families that were powerful for a long time, somebody wanders off the reservation, and now like hundreds of years of careful planning just get torn asunder. And so these things, I think, I find it interesting because I mean, not coming from one of those families, it's like how obviously at some point these dynastic families started from nothing at some point. People weren't just born billionaires, right? So they start from nothing, and they've managed to kind of claw their way into a successful path and then held on to it. Because a lot of people have like one generation of wealth, and then all their children are just like morons or just sitting there waiting for dad to die.
Yeah.
So how do you create something that transcends your own existence, your own physical existence? You're done, you're a memory, and yet things you've done, decisions you make, are still positively echoed into people that are your great grandchildren, like 1/16 you.
Mhm.
You know, the other 15/16 of it is somebody else's DNA. But if you can make decisions that will still be that positive influence, and that to me I find really fascinating.
I mean, collectively, for example, the trio here, we've been around people who are either our age or younger,
Oh boy,
who live the lavish lifestyle.
you are like babies.
And you can see them slowly progress, like their character progresses into that of like hedonistic tendency.
Yep.
And that's a very scary thing.
Yeah, for sure. Because there's an infinite amount of things that the world can offer you that will scratch that itch. And there are people. You can always find ways to spend. There's always ways to indulge in the most extreme of appetites, and so that's there's no end to that. But ultimately, it's not a rewarding life. I mean, I know a lot of people who are very, very wealthy, and if they don't have some core that they subscribe to, you can tell there's an emptiness, because you realize that no matter what happens, no matter how much you spend, no matter how many Ferraris you drive, how many like Michelin star meals you eat, you're gonna die maybe a few years later than everyone else if you stay healthy. If you do lots of very expensive cocaine, you'll die a lot sooner, right?
Yeah.
There's no
Top
It
notch.
feels like you're talking to a undeveloped brain somehow, even
Yeah.
though you guys are supposed to be at like the same level technically,
Right.
considering school,
Right.
considering every experience you've had.
But also, I think being in my 40s is interesting because I can see people my age that have made suboptimal choices, and I'm looking around like at all my high school classmates, and it's like I'm probably actually, there's no one from my high school year that's doing as well as I am right now in terms of like physical health, in terms of everything else. A lot of my classmates, they're obese, they're on their third divorce, their hair, their skin, everything about their physicality is a reflection of their emotional state. You look at the Facebook feeds; it's always it's the unhappy. Everything is feeding off into each other, and I mean I've had my own stumbles, but it's like being able to retain as much as they have has been a struggle, because I think we're just not optimized around that, and it's something I think a lot about. I mean, the difference between like a healthy and unhealthy 25-year-old is not. It's visually harder to tell them apart, right? Your 25-year-old can do tons of drugs, don't get any sleep, eat garbage food, don't work out, and you're just gonna be slightly pudgier than a 25-year-old that lifts and eats healthy and whatever. Like there's the physical difference is not all that obvious.
Yeah.
But it's like your body is also compound interest. In 10 years, the compound interest of like healthy habits really starts to show. A healthy 35-year-old and an unhealthy 35-year-old is very obvious. Whereas the difference will be, you take a shower, you do a makeover, and you can pretty much look relatively indistinguishable from a healthy 25-year-old.
Yeah.
If you're living an unhealthy, very destructive lifestyle.
And it is the difference between chronic disease or, having a vital body.
Right.
That makes
And
all the
everything feeds
difference.
into it. I think a lot of very smart people I know, there's this whole idea of, oh, I live life of the mind, so I don't need to work out.
Yeah.
Right?
Need to work.
Right? I mean,
Please.
you laugh, but it's like that is a misconceit of a lot of. I think it's a nerd cope. It's like, well,
It's a nerd go.
right. It's a story that you tell yourself because, oh, I'm a smart person, and those jocks, they only focus on their body. Therefore, like this fake idea that like there's a finite amount of energy, and if you devote it toward like working out, you're gonna take away from your brain. Like everyone's like a Dungeons and Dragons character. We're like, oh, I gotta put all my points into int. I don't want to put any points in strength. That's gonna help me like be a smart person. It's like no, everything feeds into each other. Having a vital, physically healthy body nourishes your brain, and vice versa. Like having a smart mind helps you become a better athlete. It's not either or, and people that have that false binary will unnecessarily limit themselves. You'll be the fat like smart kid that gets exhausted just getting up and eating your ho-hos.
Yeah.
Or you'll be the dumb athlete that doesn't know how to like take care of your body and then gets injured in some stupid and preventable way. Neither are really desirable outcomes.
Sorry, you saying the high school athlete that just eats like shit, that reminded me of a kid that I knew in high school, and I'm not going to name names.
I think we all knew that kid.
But this kid was pretty big in high school, and it wasn't because he was fat. He was actually like in really, really good shape. And then lo and behold, it came out that he was on growth hormones throughout almost his entire high school career.
Whoa.
Sophomore year, like 15 years old.
Wait, illegal or legal stuff?
They say legal,
But not really.
Either way,
Yeah.
it's unhealthy.
Either way, you're still taking growth hormones. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
shit that cracks me up. Like,
Yeah.
I had a friend that's like, "Oh, I'm doing growth hormones." I'm like, "Are you fucking crazy?"
Yeah.
Like, why are you doing that? And he's like, "It's regulated by the FDA."
Do you understand the
I'm like, "No, it's
ramifications?"
not."
FDA
Yes.
is bullshit.
I'm like, that is some bullshit, dude. You're taking fucking growth hormone. Anyways,
Yeah.
this kid in high school, on growth hormones, jacked,
Yeah.
a year after high school ends.
Mm.
Super fucking fat, super out of shape.
Yep.
He kept the width, right? Like he was still super wide from
Right.
from working out, but he put on like probably
Tons of-
30 or 40 pounds of
So it
fat.
started blobbing outwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude,
you're
the
like, oh
pendulum
my God.
inevitably swings.
Yep.
Like,
Well, the side effects, dude, you can't fuck with that, man.
Well,
Yeah.
he's working out like crazy, doing all that football shit where
Yeah.
it's like, oh, it's 120 degrees on the field, but you're pushing this 400-pound sled like
Yeah.
back and forth 8 times, you know? That's a little unrealistic. but he was doing all that, and then he just stopped.
Mm.
And he kept taking the growth hormones afterwards.
And
So
probably
now,
eating the same level he was before. and that's-
exactly.
right.
So he's not working out, taking growth hormones, eating the same.
you know what that is? The simulation gods are punishing him. This is not a cheat code. You're gonna
Yes.
suffer from this.
Yeah. I remembered when I was a kid thinking about like watching Olympic athletes from Eastern Bloc countries. Same thing where people from like at the time East Germany, Russia, and whatnot,
Yeah.
and they would all be on like they're very obviously like on all the illegal drugs they can be pumped full of, and
No.
all of them they suffer tremendously. Everything is optimized around performing at your peak at like 19, 20, 21. And if we shave like 5, 10, 15 years of your life on the other end, well, that's not my problem.
Yeah.
Oh.
At least you got the gold for the
I got the
country.
goal for it, right?
Yeah.
The country matters, and so but ultimately you have to live with your own body. So
Yeah.
regardless of, but I get the weird pressure of athletic competition. Nobody cares who comes in second
Yeah.
place. Like the most miserable person at the
So
Olympics
true.
is the person who got silver medal.
You're the first loser.
Yeah, exactly. Right. If you're bronze, you're like, oh my god, I barely didn't even get on the podium. Thank God, I at least got bronze. Right. Gold, everyone's happy. Silver, you're right in
Just
the middle.
fucking fuming
Everyone's
inside.
congratulating you, and you have to smile and pretend to be happy. Right. You go, oh, thank you, congratulations. Oh yeah. That's what I dreamed for all my life is getting
Yeah.
a silver medal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now I have to wait 4 to
My
8
country.
years.
And if you're good enough to be silver medal, you know what you missed to get gold.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You knew exactly if I just did this thing differently, just this one thing that I. So that person has got and you have to. It's the combination of the frustration and the fact that you have to pretend to be gracious when everyone's congratulating you. That's got to be the most frustrating person to be.
You know what Olympic sport that probably hurts the most
Yeah.
in is high jump.
Oh,
This guy literally beat me by a quarter of
Yep.
an inch.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like literally that
Yep.
much
Yep.
is what he beat me by.
Yep.
What?
If
Yeah.
I just farted, I would have gotten up and over that.
Well, extra propulsion.
Just as you go up.
That quarter inch, bro.
I was debating about that bean burrito, and
Yeah.
I passed on it.
Should have
And it
taken
cost
it.
me the gold.
But it's amazing. It takes years of work, and you have to get the edge by like a millimeter.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
If that.
Right. But then every single little edge counts basically at that level.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating thing. I mean, like, but if you're not a competitive athlete, it's just simply I want to be healthy. Then optimizing other things aren't nearly as stark, right?
Mhm.
That's,
Yeah.
And I think about this as well in terms of percentiles. Like athlete, you have to be basically top 0.001 percentile to actually make money from it. If you're
Yeah.
like a top 5% athlete, nobody cares.
Mhm.
There's some things you have to be like literally one of the best in the world to actually make money at it. Like, I play StarCraft, but it's like, I watch these like professional
Oh my
StarCraft players,
God.
right? And it's like, you have to be like literally one of there's like 30 people in the world that can make money at it. Everyone else is just, I can admire the fact that, wow, you have a lot of extremely difficult to acquire skills
Yeah.
that you spent hundreds of hours refining, and you're sitting with like 5 other roommates, doing like just night after night after night, just improving and perfecting your build. And that's why, and then watching your own replays to see where you screwed up.
Yeah.
And you got no money at it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
whereas other industries, you can be like a 50th percentile performer and still make good money. Like a software engineer, you can be like a bottom 25%
Yeah.
software engineer and make 100,000 a year.
Mm.
You can be like a
Base.
bottom 10% like dentist and have someone willing to pay you to fix their teeth, do their teeth cleaning, right? So it's a weird balancing act of how much do you want to pour into something for, this it's optimization equation of, do I want to pursue something even if it's not lucrative, or can I do something that's going to be kind of, I know I'm mediocre at it, but it makes enough money that allows me to do other things.
Mhm.
And everyone's got their own answer to that question. I don't have a solution.
Yeah, that's the internal battle. Like, how do you walk, or do you walk away from something that you've spent 15 to 20 years of your life on?
Right. I mean, there's a book I loved. So this came out like 15 years ago. Robert Frank wrote a book called The Winner Take All Economy, talking about this phenomenon of like certain kinds of industries are basically like this. Athletic performance, music, where basically if you are the best, you get a ton of money, accolades, and whatnot. Everyone else is like, go pound sand. You may as well not have bothered because you have no money out of it. You get nothing out of it. Like think about 100 years ago, if you wanted to listen to music, you had to hire a musician to play it in front of you. There's no
Yeah.
recording, right? And so people like music. So even if you're a mediocre musician, you can find some job. Even poor people want to hear music, and they'll all throw a penny into your hat to hear some shoddy rendition of whatever.
Yeah.
Now you can torrent like the world's best violinists, the world's best guitars, the world's best everything. Why would you pay any more money for a second best of anything?
Mm-hmm.
And so every musician that's not like literally the best is now like there's no market for anything. There's live music. There's
Sorry,
some market
Logan.
for it.
And that's why I left my school.
That's why I left Berkeley. I'm like just shitting. Oh, that's right. The music.
It's weird you're saying. I'm like almost getting chills because I had a conversation with the teacher there, and it went down exactly like that. And he looked at me and he's like, "You should be in business." He's like, "This isn't for you." Like, you get it.
Hilarious.
I was like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
like
Jesus."
dude. Yeah, you get to see how saturated it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Tons of talent. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine who's up in Seattle, and his wife is in the Seattle Philharmonic.
Yeah.
And musician, the Philharmonic is like a very prestigious thing, and it's like
One of the top.
tons of people want to be performing in the Philharmonic. There's every single slot when they open up auditions. People pour in from all
Thousands.
around, and they all are fighting for a job that pays I think like $11,000 a year.
Wow.
And it's like the only people that play are either like independently wealthy, they have rich family, or they're married to someone who's makes real money. Like in his case,
true.
he works at Microsoft, so he's like, yeah, sure, go do your thing. I mean,
They do not pay very well
No.
to be part of the most prestigious group of
11,000 a
music.
year?
yeah,
one
to
of the
be
most.
literally like the top 0.01% of an entire state, right? You got to beat a bunch of people to fight tooth and nail to get a job that pays you next to nothing.
But listen, I get it. Like if I were to get paid 11 G's a year to play soccer,
You would do it.
I do
And
it
the
for
fact that
free.
right?
I do it for free anytime.
Don't say that to your agent.
Yeah, don't. Yeah,
now
keep-
you're on
yeah,
record.
keep that
Now
quiet.
when you get that
Shh.
contract, it's like,
Damn
oh
it.
well, we got a
We got
recording
you on
of
statements.
I still want that money, baby.
Zaid, let me tell you about a few other industries.
I don't like this, right?
Now that you've ruined this.
Right.
Yeah, but
So that's
No, you got a point though. But the deal with the Philharmonic, right, is you're getting paid shit.
yeah.
You're
Yeah.
getting paid absolutely nothing. But the deal is now you have the accolade. Now it's on your resume. So
You have clout.
if you're smart, you go work for Disney. You go work for Pixar. You go work for any animation or Hollywood production film
Right. You
house
can-
that
you can leverage it.
specializes
yeah,
in music.
work
and
as
that's
an
where you get
employee
money.
or a contracted
Right.
individual. You know,
Yeah.
you don't have to have the ego to just be like, no, I own this.
Right.
You can do that, dude. And there's a
But-
lot of
but-
money.
but a
You
lot of
have to know
artists-
what kind of person you are.
But a lot of artists aren't business people, and there's a weird kind of a thing of, I don't want to be
You're
selling
right.
out.
That's right.
You're
and
very
their
right.
anxiety about not feeling like they're selling out is what keeps them from monetizing their talents,
Yeah.
which are legit. Like if you're a member of Philharmonic,
Yeah.
you have legit talent.
Uh-huh.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
0.01% level talent.
Yeah.
And also just not just a talent, but also work ethic. Being
Yeah.
able to go rehearse the same thing over and over and over again to get it perfect. Because you beat other people that rehearsed a little bit less than you. Maybe people that are more talented than you, but just rehearsed a little less and
Yeah.
whatnot. The amount of the ruthlessness of that kind of
Yeah.
competition.
And that's
then-
where agents come in. All
Yeah.
the business work.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? Ruthless.
Yeah, well, So that I find interesting. Like,
Yeah.
how do you? But all of these things that boils down again to you get to live your life, and then what happens afterward?
Mm.
Do you have what kind of legacy? You at some point, everything that you own is going to be in an estate sale. It's going to be left to the money in your bank account goes to somebody
It's
else.
truth.
All the clothes you own is going to go to a thrift store. The car you drive right now is going to be probably
Yeah.
auctioned off. So what is left of you as a person? Do you want blood family? Do you have ambitions to have your own children? Do you have nephews? For me, like part of the things I enjoy also is mentoring and kind of sharing as best I can some of the things that I know.
Yeah.
but
Which
it's-
leads me, I have a question.
Yo.
A very interesting question. Now, in stages of our lives, we tend to go through different things, and we have like a different mentality throughout these phases.
Yeah.
And I would label it within like each decade is kind of like a different mindset.
like a
right?
chapter, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, like a
Mhm.
chapter of your life.
Yeah.
So, like coming across, I'm like moving on to 30 now.
Yep.
Kind of moving on to 27.
Nearing it.
Yeah. So I'm feeling the effects of like, I still remember my thoughts of 3 years ago because
Yeah.
it was very near.
Yes.
Right. But I would say stress.
Mhm.
Stress is something that I have never heard of.
Mm.
Right. Didn't know that I had it,
Mhm.
but I started acknowledging it after 25.
Mhm.
How to live with it, how to manage it even.
Yep.
Right. Now, a lot of people in their 30s start to tell me like that's where you shine. It's in your 30s. It's 33 plus. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Now I would have to say 40 plus. What should your mindset be looked at as? You know what I mean?
That's
I think big question.
It's a
It
big
is.
question.
It is a big question, but what I'm saying is you've already kind of had to deal with a lot of things. You know what I
Right.
mean? You've had to adjust certain things. Now, what can you let go in your life? Like what should you not focus on? Like in terms of
It's a long
like
list.
for me, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah, go ahead.
Stress was something that you just had to get through
Endure.
and then realize that whatever is going to happen is going to happen, so stop stressing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that was something that I figured within this chapter.
That's good.
Yeah.
There are people that are 40 that haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
So that a big part of it, I think, is just kind of energy management is, I think, the most useful thing to think about.
Mhm.
I guess the meta lesson of I have a finite amount of energy and I can either spend it on ways that will improve my life down the stream, or I can the idea of energy like another resource, like money. I can either invest it or I can consume it. So certain kinds of energy is consumption. It's getting into an argument with somebody. Like I get into very few arguments these days. It's just like if somebody disagrees, either it's like, okay, I can persuade them, in which case I am a salesman, so I will try to like present my best case, or it's like I can size people up pretty quickly with just the years of pattern recognition and be like, this person's never going to change their mind. I'll just smile, nod, and agree.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's it. Then that ends the argument. It's like, okay, well, he's agreeing. So it's like they can tell I'm being insincere, but they have what are they gonna do? Like, no, you secretly disagree. It's like, no, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's
Yeah.
exactly
How do
what's
you
going
know
on.
I secretly disagree?
Yeah.
I just
Are you a
agree.
mind reader?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a mind reader. You're right. You got it. You got me. I secretly
You
do.
fucking nailed it.
Right? And then that's it. You're there's no attack surface. And that way, my energy is preserved because there are people that seek arguments. That's what they live for. They want conflict. They want the thrill of destroying somebody. And it's like, well, you just don't get an attack surface with me. My energy is very expensive, and I want to spend it in ways that are beneficial to myself and the people I care about. And since you're neither,
Goodbye.
I love how you're like, my energy has a premium and you can't afford it.
yes, basically. So it's and that's that. When you're young, all you have is time and energy. You're not very valued by workplaces. They're not getting paid well, and so you all you can do is spend your energy and time to try and like build connections. The other, it's watching. I think also, Pete. This is the other thing is watching my same age peers drop one by one is also instructive. Watching people that are like they peaked at 30, but then something bad happens. They made these bad decisions, and now, oh my God, this happened. Like, I'll give you an example. There's a high school acquaintance. I don't know him personally, but very, very successful. One of these like apex everything, rich family, football star, went to a great school in college, scholarships, and then sometime in his 30s had some sort of surgery or whatnot, and then got hooked on opioids. And it went from like, a football playing child of like super wealthy family, had the discipline to go through medical school, had a medical practice, and then prescribed himself drugs and just watched him like destroy himself in like 4 years.
That's sad.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
Like he didn't just luck into his 30-something success. He had a successful medical practice, he had a wife, all that gone. She left him, kids hate him, blah, blah, blah. He's a burned out drug addict. And
That is rough.
And so it's right, because if you're a successful 30-something person, most even horrible decisions you can probably recover from. Oh, I was driving drunk. Okay, well, you lose your car, you get dinged on your insurance, you got to pay like, some horrible fine and, blah, blah, blah. You can recover from that. There are things you can do to pull yourself back from like a horrible screw up like that. Right? You get into a fist fight with somebody and then you break their jaw. Okay, you do like 6 months in jail and then, blah, blah, blah. You hire a fancy defense lawyer, you get the charges reduced, and then you get to move on from your life. You can take like a 6-figure hit and move on. In this case, the hit wiped him out. Everything that he was building up that point. He had a charmed life all up until that point. And then that one single substance just burned it to the ground.
Sheesh.
And you can watch it in slow motion. It wasn't like a accident where it just happened over the course of, did you hear what happened to so-and-so? It's like oh. And then, oh. And then, oh.
God,
Yeah.
man.
It goes to the
That's
idea
sad.
that it takes years to build something up,
Yeah.
something meaningful up,
Yeah.
and then you can just
Something
destroy
like
it with
this,
one
right?
thing.
Some kinds of things can be that dangerous, which is why I was injured in 2015, an ankle injury. And it was interesting. I was going to the doctor, and every time I visited the hospital, you want some opioids? Want some drugs? Want some drugs? Want some drugs? He was offering it every time I visited, right? I'm like, nah, I'm going to throw away the prescription. I was tempted. I mean, for 2 years, my alarm clock was my ankle screaming at me. Every morning, the only time I was not in pain was when I was asleep. And so the only way I woke up to my ankle just seizing up. And it was tempting. It was really tempting. Really wanted it, but also the existence of someone like that, it's like I had like a stark cautionary tale of what it could be. This could be you, and you start off. I didn't start off as high as he is, so I have much. He fell really, really hard. I don't even have like a wealthy family that could send me to rehab and whatnot. I mean, he had all that, and he still fell. Like, if I fall, it's like, remember that guy? Yeah. And so that's a. But it's like, how is it possible to internalize the lesson without having that stark of a reminder? That's the thing that I'm interested in. I mean, we touched on the idea of Dune, like the notion of ancestral memory. Yeah. Like for those who aren't familiar with the novel, in the Dune novel, one of the concepts they explore is the idea that not only do you have your parents to teach you things, if you take the right combination of some drugs and meditation, you can access all of your blood lineage's ancestral memories, lessons that your great-grandfather learned the hard way. You can learn those lessons and internalize it as well. Obviously, we don't have access to it in the real world, or at least we haven't figured out how to, but that would be useful. Imagine being able to learn from like thousands of people that have a vested interest in your success. I mean, if you can imagine all your ancestors looking down on your life right now, it's like they've endured like war and famine and all these sacrifices, and all of them have one thing in common. All of them were able to find a partner, have a child, and raise that child until that child is old enough to fend for themselves. And that's true of every single ancestor into antiquity. They did this in incredible chaotic situation to be able to access all of their life experiences, or at least the most important lessons for them that they learned the hard way, so that you can live a life where it's like, well, your life is worth it because one of my descendants ended up like you. Like for them to say that, or do they go, man, why do I even bother? If they look at your life, your answer is like, I did all this, and now what? You're twerking on this thing called YouTube? What? Yeah. Right? Could you imagine? It's like, yeah, you know what? I should have just jerked off. That would have been much easier. Man, what did I? Tried so hard. Oh man, I should have just gotten the Hummer that night. This is what a waste of time.
That download would be priceless. Okay. But also keep in mind that there are also thousands of people who would take that information in and just be like, I don't want it.
Right. Yeah. But that's the thing, I feel.
Yeah. Something you've been talking about this a lot, and I'm like, how many generations do you have to go back before people are like, hey, did you talk to like fucking Jim? Like, what did he have to say about you? And he's like, you fucking hated me. And you're like, no, he's the guy.
He's the boy.
Yeah.
He's our man.
Because isn't it something like a third or a fourth of all people on planet Earth can trace their lineage back to one dude in Hong Kong?
Something.
Like, who lived in a port, and it was somewhere in Asia.
No, Genghis Khan. No, actually, I had a whole
That's
bit
another
about
one.
this.
That's another one.
Something like 1 or 2% of people in China have Genghis Khan DNA.
Oh, that's just
wow. Whoa.
Well,
yeah.
now,
China.
that sounds impressive until you realize how that happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
he's kind of a rapey dude.
Well, Genghis Khan did just get canceled on Twitter.
Well, here's
tried to cancel him. You can't cancel a dead man.
Yeah, but so for a while I performed stand up for a bit, and one of the bits I used to do that I probably wouldn't be able to perform these days is talking about the idea of like, so they say about 1% of Genghis Khan DNA in people of Chinese descent. And it's like, so what's the correct percentage of Genghis in a guy? Like, you don't want a 0% Genghis guy. A little too timid. Do I have your permission to hold your hand? Like, that's like
soy
no
boy beta cuck.
Right? Exactly. That's too
Soy
far.
boys.
You don't want to be like 100% Genghis. Like, oh, hey, you're attractive. I'm gonna grab you and take you to the bathroom and then have my way with you. Right? That's too much.
Club him in the head, drag him to
exactly
the
right. So there's got to be some optimal percentage of Genghis. For a modern. It was like 15, 20%. There's a correct optimal amount of Genghis to be. And as I say this, as I say this, I realize that some woman in this audience, she actually is turned on by the 100% Genghis. Everyone else is too timid for her. And
there's
guys, and the thing is, she's in this room right now, and she's not alone. And I'm like, hey, the guy that's with her, whoever you are in this room, I was like, yeah, I know the sex is really good, but when it's over, it's gonna be really, really awful. Run now. It's not worth it, man. It's not worth it.
Hey, babe, you got DNA that goes back to Genghis? Some good pillow talk afterward?
No pillow talk. No. You can stop crying now.
Pull up the ancestry results.
That's gonna be.
Pull up the ancestry results. 100% Genghis.
Yeah. That's the trade-off, I think, is the how do you incorporate all that in a modern environment? How much do you want to be of each thing? You know, the warrior archetype, the scholar archetype, the businessman archetype. Each of them have their own benefits and drawbacks.
Yeah.
If you're a pure scholar, you'll have no money. You can get your ass kicked. Pure warrior, you're not smart enough to handle it yourself in a modern technological age. You'll get ripped off. You'll be sent off to wars by someone who's smart and can manipulate you into killing his enemies, right? So there's a combination of all these archetypes and the combination will change from age to age to age. In a warlike environment, you want everyone to be at least to be able to handle a sword, a gun, a rifle, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a peaceful age, not as important. So I don't know. It's a weird problem to figure out which of your ancestral memories you want to draw most upon, because we are all descendants of scholars, of warriors, of
inventors,
businessmen, whatnot. And so there's different aspects of each of that in you, but you can also choose which ones to emphasize and which ones are like, yeah, you know, it's there, but I am not going to spend too much time developing it.
Yeah. Totally.
So that's stuff that I think a lot about in terms of my own life. Is like, okay, what aspects of these disparate kinds of archetypes are worth emphasizing, developing, honing, and which ones are like, yeah, I could develop it, but.
And a lot of it, of course, will be subjective.
It is, very. It's a very.
But there
personal...
are also some commonalities with everyone that you can hone in on.
Absolutely. So it's a weird thing to think a lot about. But I mean, as one gets older, it's like you can see people that didn't think about this, and they live kind of relatively low intensity lives, kind of very NPC-ish existence, kind of.
Yeah,
right.
I'm taking that, by the way. NPC
We're all taking that.
I know that. There's always I was having this conversation with a friend last night.
Yeah.
There's the two types of people: the people that are out there to go get it, and they want to make sure to do multiple things in their lives.
Right.
And there's the people that go to school, graduate, and work for the same company.
Right.
That's it, for the rest of their lives. So those people are always going to be non-intense.
Right.
Right. It's just going to be like that 9 to 5, clock in your fucking hours and just dip.
Some people just have that Renaissance man type of energy.
Right.
It's like, okay, I've done this, now I need to conquer this.
Right.
And I don't know. I disagree with that. You know what I mean? I don't like it. But at the same time, like I'm an understanding person, so I will understand that, you know what, maybe it's not for everyone.
Right.
Right.
That's
that
the thing
whole
is
intensity.
It's very exhausting, and we are creatures of comfort, and also somebody does have to. You don't want your accountant to be like this.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna be very adventurous with this guy's money. Oh yeah, that's deductible. Everything's deductible.
Going
diving in the Bahamas.
Right? Everything's deductible in here, boy.
Right? You don't want, if you got a surgeon working on you want him to be kind of a nerd. You want him to, and then next week I'm gonna go skydiving. Yeah. I'm still hungover from that party last night and the stripper I banged. You want him to be kind of boring. You want him to be like this,
eyes glazed over all the
it's like, dude.
You bringing that up, my dad had this really crazy surgery in his neck, like where they had to go through the front and like fix these discs in his spine who were pinching a nerve.
Yeah.
His surgeon was one of like let's go do crazy shit. And
boy.
So he was surfing in Newport, and I think he took a dive off of his board, hit his head on a rock, and that was it.
Oh boy, right?
Yeah,
really?
Right. Yeah.
So it's like
Straight
some
up.
people, you just want them to have very boring lives. You don't want them to have an exciting life. You'd rather them
listen, motherfucker. I need you around.
I need you around. I have very, very boring hobbies, like growing your own garden and then watching your 401k plan.
Sommelier.
Right?
Yeah, that whole everything by the book kind of.
You want people like that. People like building your safety equipment. You want that's the thing. That they serve a necessary function. So I don't want to scorn them too hard.
Of course,
because I think that it is an important part of a civilization. Is you want to have your adventurers and you're going to have the people that tend to the flocks and mend the wounds,
and people that do the dirty work,
keep things running at a very predictable pace. And so it's all necessary, I think, and everyone has to figure out who they are and do your role well, play your position well.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a famous quote: "The world needs ditch diggers."
Yeah.
It's
You're
true.
right.
Well, not anymore. Robots can do that now. So I know what you mean.
That's where you headed.
Yeah, that's where we're headed. So,
God, even ditch diggers are like fucking AI.
God
Taking our jobs.
Yeah.
Fucking Boston Dynamic, those pieces of shit.
Hey, hopefully
God.
with AI, bro, they'll fix a 5 freeway.
Oh my
No, that'll be the
Good luck
last
with
thing
that.
that's fixed. Everything else will get fixed before that.
Good luck
Oh,
with
we have
that.
floating cars now. We don't even need it.
Bro,
On the
dude,
ground,
like sometimes
jeez.
I would literally see Caltrans on there for the past 15 years just eating burritos, and I'm like, what the fuck are you guys
Well,
doing? How is this not?
Or better yet, there's that little strip of a road by my house over by UCI. It's not
They're actually working on that.
I saw
I'm
it last
surprised.
night.
Yeah.
But
They have some
okay.
tractors going around here.
Like there's this one road, it's
Doing
like
donuts?
3/4 of a mile long. That's it. It's fucking nothing for
It's been
fixing a
years.
road. It's been under construction for probably 6 or 7 years.
Yep.
Ugh.
Yep.
And both lanes have been shut down.
Yep.
Like sometimes, and there's fucking nothing that gets done.
And like you
Like-
start to think maybe they're not getting paid enough.
No.
dude.
Oh,
they're getting
someone's
no.
getting paid.
A shit ton.
They're getting
Somebody
paid
is
a
getting
shit
paid.
ton,
And in
dude.
fact, the longer it goes, the more they get paid.
Yeah.
That's the real hustle.
Aha.
And that's the problem. There's like and different kinds of societies have different kinds of level of fastidiousness and honesty versus other ones. I mean, there's a book I read. This is what it came out I think like 15, 20 years ago. Francis Fukuyama wrote a book called Trust. The idea, and what he talked about was he was a McKinsey consultant talking about how different kinds of societies have high, medium, and low trust. And high trust societies, people are conscientious. It would be considered unseemly and dishonorable to do this, and people would just stop out of embarrassment. Be like, no, this is just a terrible way to make money. An extreme example of like a high trust society would be like Japan, where things like this just doesn't happen. Like the police in Japan are bored. They're down to like, well, I guess we got to return a lost cat because literally we caught all the criminals, and by all we mean that 2 guys that keep shoplifting.
Yeah.
And
Got some
they've
crazy
learned their lesson. They're now embarrassed. They're living with their mothers now, and they understand it's rad. And we got nothing to do. We got an 8-hour shift. Got nothing to do. All right, well, I guess I'm returning the stolen kitten then. Drive across town.
Yeah.
And after there was a flood or something like where after like earthquakes and natural disasters, police stations, people will say, oh yeah, I found this like wad of cash or something. It's like, well, it's got no name on it, but it's not mine. And so, if someone lost this amount, well, it was found at this location. People will do this.
Wow.
Right. And this is the level of high trust in Japanese society.
That is fucking awesome.
Over
we need more of that.
pocket. Immediately.
Right?
Most people pocket
Yeah.
it.
Hey yo,
Even
Christmas
if you're normally on, it's like,
2020.
okay, no one's gonna. It's like, yeah,
They don't care if it's drug money. Or
Right.
they don't care.
No, there's like a weird system where you got to put up flyers for 30 days if you
Yeah.
don't turn it into the police, and if
Right.
nobody contacts you, I think you're allowed
You're in
to
the clear,
keep it.
right?
So yeah, some people what they do is they just hang one fucking shitty flyer in like
Ah,
a
do the
storm
minimum.
drain,
Right.
and
Yeah.
then the cops are like, "Well, what the fuck? You can't keep." And there's like, "No, I hung a sign."
Yeah.
Takes a
Where
picture
no
of it
one
and
can
everything.
see it.
Yeah.
the minimum needed, and whatever. But that's the thing about Japanese society, and societally, it's a relatively, in some ways, an uncreative. A lot of people, they're rule followers and whatnot. But on the other hand, it's an incredibly safe place to live. It's a place where being adventurous is pretty aggressively punished.
It's like if Irvine was a fucking country.
Yeah, basically.
It's part of the reason why we want to visit Japan.
Yeah,
soon.
Japan
One
would be
day.
a fun place to visit. But
Yeah.
but that's how orderly it is, and it comes with some benefits.
Yeah.
And so it's a weird combination, right? But they're not going to be. Artists are considered very weird, deviant people, and they're looked down upon in many ways in Japan. It's like, oh, this guy's gonna be an artist. Why? You could work at Sony or Samsung, and why would you? Not Samsung. Excuse me. Sorry, Samsung is a Korean company. Sorry,
South Korea.
Japanese
And
viewers.
by the way, for
No,
people out there, South Korean.
Cancel culture's coming after you, good sir.
Oh man, no. There's a very intense rivalry between like Japan and Korea. That's interesting.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I would
Battle of the
imagine
tech-
giants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're both to the point where interesting. Like I remembered, I met someone who's Korean, and I was visiting Seoul. This is like again many years ago. She's Korean American, and so when she went to Seoul, a lot of her older relatives, she had like a Sony camera or something. People were giving her shit about it.
What?
How are you giving money to Japanese? That's disgusting. You should have a blah, blah, blah. Like, they were giving her a lot of grief, and the total strangers would approach her and see the Sony logo and be like, "How dare you?"
Human
That is
beings.
amazing.
But it has high dynamic range.
Yeah.
Could you imagine
Don't
that
give a
shit
fuck.
in
Yeah.
America?
No.
California's like, you bought
Yeah.
a fucking Samsung?
Yeah.
You could have bought Apple, you
Yeah.
piece of shit.
Well, it's made overseas anyway, so whatever. But yeah, but that
Oh
kind
my
of
God.
yourself.
But that intense kind of like ethnic loyalty
Yeah.
and outgroup hostility is something that is so it comes with it all these different kinds of pros and cons. And so I don't know. I mean,
It's amazing because human beings are tribal creatures,
Oh, yeah.
but we live in societies that are so large.
Yes.
We have such a large and dense population that we've forgotten about the tribal part.
yes, and we try to pretend it doesn't exist, which I think it's one of the most I think dangerous kind of lies we tell ourselves. Like,
Mhm.
oh, we're all, people that go on social media saying, oh, I'm a global citizen. Like, what does that even mean?
Get the fuck out of here.
Right? It's like citizen means I'm this and I'm not that.
That-
I'm part of this family and not
Yeah.
that family.
That falls under spiritual.
There's
You
such
know?
thing as
Yeah.
a global
It's just like-
passport where you can just move
Or
around.
it's like the what's the thing where people
We need
what's
to
the
help
kind of
planet Earth.
citizen? It's a something citizen.
Sovereign citizen.
Sovereign
Yeah,
citizen.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah,
That is
yeah,
a
yeah.
perfect example.
Is that the one
of
where
that.
you're born midair?
No. Sovereign. It's a bunch.
skydiving?
It's a weird kind of thing that I see some people in the U.S. do, where they say, well, I'm a sovereign citizen, which means that my home is my country, and America is a foreign country that I kind of wander into to get my groceries and come back to my sovereign.
Yeah.
No, that's the thing. There's
seriously.
there
He's
are
right.
there are thousands of people that they declare themselves as. I mean, obviously they live inside of a actual
Yeah,
state.
and their
Yeah.
passport says otherwise.
And they have a
They don't
social
have a passport.
they
security.
don't have a passport. What the?
They've never
Yeah.
traveled in their lives.
Oh yeah, they've never traveled their lives. They got a license as a kid maybe, and then as an adult they go, oh, I've declared myself a sovereign citizen. I mean, I think the real reason is a lot of times they have like arrest warrants and stuff, and they think this is gonna
Yeah.
get them out of like, oh well, you can't extradite me because I'm in a foreign country now. I'm in the country of like Mia-stan.
Yeah,
And,
Mia-stan.
and you need to get like you need an entry visa to get to my country.
Yeah.
which is like my 3 acres in the countryside, and so
My plot of land owned
Sheesh.
by the state of California.
Shut your mouth.
Don't ruin the illusion, man. Quiet on the set. You're shattering the fourth wall. But yeah, that's but it's a weird cope. And
Yeah.
it's there's there's a series I love on Amazon, the Bosch. It's a police detective series, and so
Okay.
one of the episodes it goes into like a guy who's a whole family that calls themselves sovereign citizens and whatnot, and it's like,
Lord.
and they have then they go in. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go into this foreign country called California and go get some groceries and come back to my own land.
Yeah.
And then they go, okay, well look, your cousin's wanted for murder, so we're gonna. It's like, oh, you're encroaching on my land.
This is not going to work.
These foreigners, you did not get permission from like Mia-stan to cross
Yeah.
cross this new country. You're
God.
all in violation of
Yeah.
UN rules. Like, okay, dude.
That's some Borat
Is this a real
shit,
show?
dude.
No. When I say real, like, is it more of like a documentary style?
Oh no.
or is it
This
scripted?
is scripted. But
Okay,
it's
okay.
reflecting a real life phenomenon of people that declare themselves sovereign. This is
Gotcha.
this
Okay.
is behavior that I don't know the full number, but it's definitely in the thousands of people that do sincerely believe themselves to be like sovereign.
You know
citizens.
people
So
are
it's,
taking advantage
it's
of
called
this.
Bosch.
The series is called Bosch, and
Okay.
it's a great series. And I think they're in their 8th season now. But yeah, if you have Amazon, you
Sick.
already have it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's
I'll
it's
check it out
basically
for
he's
sure.
a homicide detective, and he's kind of seat of the pants, play by his own rules kind of archetype. But I think it's season 2 or 3 where they deal with sovereign citizens, and they're like, yeah, we dealt with this before. You have to like nod politely as a yes, I'm a foreigner encroaching on your foreign soil. No, I didn't get an entry stamp to cross into your estate. I don't have my passport with me. I'm in violation of international laws. File a complaint with the UN. I'm still arresting your cousin.
Yeah. Oh my god, dude.
Oh my god! I thought that was real for a second. So when you said they're like, you can't enter this country without a visa,
Yeah.
and you're like, they said, well, your cousin murdered 40 people.
Yeah, it's like,
it's time for him to go in.
yeah.
I'm like, holy shit!
Listen,
You
are
can't
you
extradite
surprised?
him. You need an extradition order from the UN. It's like,
No, I don't.
Would you
no.
be surprised with the crazy shit that's going on?
Yeah.
Like,
But it's
like, bro, you're in Fullerton. All right,
Yeah.
this ain't,
Yeah.
relax.
this ain't Guam.
well,
all right.
I mean, in fairness, I mean, they'll do things like Indian reservations. I think are technically
Yes,
right.
you're
So they'll
correct.
view these things like, well, see, it works with them, so it's work with me too. I'm my own sovereign country.
No.
It's like, yeah, I can own my own casino. I can run a whorehouse. It's like, so it's a weird. They have enough things in the real world that do corroborate with it, and they kind of latch onto them, and then kind of expand upon those things as proof of whatever notion they have in their heads. It's like, all right. And a big thing also is that well, as a sovereign citizen, I don't need to pay taxes.
Oh,
Right? That the taxes are a tribute to a foreign country. Well, I'm not an American, so I don't need to pay American taxes. I'm the president of Mia-stan, and I have my own taxes.
and I'm
I
a
collect
furry.
money. Yeah.
Come on.
Now, what do you think of that? I know a lot of people that like work in Dubai, for example.
Mhm.
They've lived here for 30 years, and then in the 30th year, they just moved to Dubai.
Yeah.
And now they're paying they're still paying taxes
Mhm.
on top of everything else.
Right.
What do you think of that law?
Because
Because I typically dislike it.
Yeah.
You know, the foreign country tax.
It's the U.S. is the only country that taxes its citizens overseas. No other country does this.
Wow.
Yeah, if you look every other country, industrialized nations, they say if you're a French national, a British national, whatever, if you earn money outside of the country, we have nothing to do with it. which is why actually it's extra obnoxious to set up bank accounts even overseas. If you have a U.S. passport, they're like, well, we have a reporting requirement. So every dollar that comes in, we have to file a bunch of stuff to. And then when you file taxes, you have to just declare that, like, yes, I don't have any foreign accounts, or yes, I do, and here's the account numbers.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then you're lying on a tax return, which is a felony.
I find that very annoying.
It's a fascinating. It's a weird. It's the story the U.S. tells itself as well. It's such a privilege to be an American that no matter where you are, you get the benefits of having an American passport. So, and if you're making enough that you're subject, because me as the first, I think 80,000 you earn outside the U.S. It's not subject to taxes. So if you're paying taxes and you're living overseas, you're doing really, really well. So it's a very unsympathetic sub-demographic. No one's going, oh, the poor guy who's making $300,000 has a cough up like $5,000 to the feds.
It's only 5 G's.
But whatever. Like, remember, if you make
whatever amount.
I'm just wondering what the tax rate is, because here in California, you get your eyes gouged out if you make over like $200K.
Yeah. But it's like, oh, you're making 200, you're complaining. It's
But still, the fact that you're going to a foreign bank and you're making foreign currency, dude, right?
Yep.
And then there's still like, we
want
still
a
have to
piece of
file paperwork that lines up with America.
They want their piece. It's think of the U.S. as a mafia boss.
Yes, it's
There
the
you go.
American way.
Hey, we're paying you for protection.
Uncle Tony needs his cuss. He needs his taste, man. You can't deny Uncle Tony his
Yeah,
taste.
the mafia boss that takes it up the ass.
Yeah, well, it's like, that's a nice passport you got there. Be a shame if something would have happened to it, huh?
Yeah.
Yay, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I got you, Marty.
It'd be a shame if we had to send you to China.
China. Speaking of, you wanted to touch on that a little bit? Or do
Absolutely,
man.
because this is a rabbit hole that we can go on forever.
we can touch on a little bit of it. I think it's so I mean, I've been watching this for quite some time, what's going on, and I mean, there's a lot of pieces going on. I think the thing that I've been most interested in recently was the China Daily is the English newspaper that's all the newspapers in China are owned by the government. China Daily is the English one. This is their like kind of PR scrubbed, like this is what we want the English speaking world to know about China. So from that perspective, it's interesting to see what they have to kind of grudgingly admit. They can't just completely pump out pro-China article after. If it looks too obviously propaganda, no one would trust it. So they have to incorporate some controlled amounts of unflattering information. And so the fascinating thing to me that came out, this article came out I think about 10 years ago, where they admitted that like lots and lots of billionaires in China and their children and their people that are associated with them die under very weird circumstances. Like the average age of death of a billionaire in China is like 45 or something. Whoa. Like there's like people that their Ferraris blow up. So and so's kid has a heart attack at 25 or some.
Yeah,
because that's normal.
And obviously there's a pattern where you're like, come on, like.
And so and this is just my own theory. Again, I've no hard like here's the smoking gun. So if you zoom back, but basically, depending on how you slice it, about 15 or 16 families that effectively rule China. They're dynastic families that have multiple generations, business interests, and land and whatnot that go back years and years and years. And some of them that are allied with each other, others that are like deadly enemies. And the current president, Xi Jinping, he has the support of about 4 of these families. The other of these 15, 16 families, they don't like him, but they can't form their own coalition. He has a plurality. The others can't agree on someone else to oust him. So that's why he's currently in position of where he is. And so these other very powerful families, they don't like him, but they can't agree upon someone to replace him. And they're fighting each other constantly. They're killing each other's as like heirs.
Yeah.
They're blowing up each other's Ferraris and whatnot. And so part of China's aggressive outward expansion is to try and like quarantine some of the most antagonistic families away from each other. So the massive growth that China has, the Belt and Road Initiative and Eastern Africa being colonized, imagine if you're these 15 families, they're not equal in power and prestige. If you're like a number 14, number 15 family, it's like, well, you're barely even in the ruling class families.
Yeah.
And it's like, they get approached and say, look, you're never going to take Shanghai. You're never going to take Beijing. You're going to be fighting for some third-tier Chinese city, dealing with rivals that have more resources than you. How about this? You take all your family, all your stuff, and you go to Africa. You get to be kings in a brand new country, and we'll take the family that most wants to kill you and move them to the southern part of Africa.
Yeah.
You two stay on each side, stop murdering each other, and make money. How's that?
Yeah, and
Wild.
both of you will be number
Both
one.
of you will be in a much better spot, right?
Yeah.
You get to be number one. And then you got to cross all the way across Africa to start killing off each other. Or you can just make money and just quietly just
Move along.
Stop the shit.
Yeah.
Stop blowing each other's kids up and murdering each other.
It sounds like the Chinese version of Peaky Blinders, to be honest.
I was gonna say, in the distance, all
Yeah.
you hear is
You're zooming into the countries and zooming out.
Game of China.
So,
Yeah.
so what is their?
Game of China.
Are you aware of their strategy in terms of Africa specifically?
Well, it's colonization and conquest, basically. I mean, that's
So as much as they can get.
as much as they can
Yeah.
get, and then different parts of it are going to be. I mean, the specific things that are interesting to me are like, what was it? Like the Democratic Republic of Congo, a landlocked country, has something like about a third or half of the world's cobalt. Wow. Very important substance
for batteries.
Yeah, for
primarily.
batteries and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And since it's a landlocked country, you have to ship all the stuff you mine via train. All the train companies that service the Democratic Republic of Congo are owned by Chinese companies. 100%. Uncle Chang wants his taste.
Hey,
And you're not gonna
Uncle
you're not gonna
Chang
move
wants his
anything unless you pay Uncle Chang his taste.
all I'm saying is the Chinese, they're so ahead of the curve
Yeah.
on a lot of shit.
Right.
Like, I mean, I've been watching TED Talk videos. They're like, Africa is going to be the next booming economy. No, the Chinese got that shit on lock.
Yeah.
They already
it
know.
is, but
They
not
knew-
the way you're thinking.
They knew about that shit 20 years ago,
Yeah.
and now they're starting to set the foundations, or it's like actually really rolling along across.
And this is the thing. I mean, the area that we all think of as China right now, it's like 98% Han Chinese. That part used to be a lot more ethnically diverse. And the Han Chinese are just really, really good at kind of conquering, raping their way across, and
You know what
then
that reminds you of?
erasing like any existence, any trace of the former inhabitants.
Mm.
So I have no doubt that in 50 to 100 years, there will be parts of Africa that will be like 100% Han Chinese, and people will say, "Oh yeah, this is our ancestral homeland. We've always been here." And like anyone who's going to disagree is like, "Ah, they're dead." No, that's not a thing. That's not a thing. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure black people are parts of Africa, but not this part. This part's the Chinese homeland.
The most recent victims being.
Yeah. So
It's-
that's gonna. I mean, I'm not saying this with any sort of glee, but it's like this is how the Chinese operate. They've already proven in our lifetime we see this happening with like Western China. With it, I don't know if you know in Tibet, they've got a China is already like insisting that all of the schools in Tibet they don't teach Tibetan anymore. They teach Mandarin Chinese.
Ah.
And so, and then tons because of the gender imbalance of major cities, they're moving lots of unmarried Chinese men into Tibet, where they have more money than local Tibetan men, and so they're marrying women, having kids with them, raising them Chinese, and like at some point, it's like, well, let's put it to a vote. Do you want to be part of China or are you Tibetan? Like, I'm a quarter Tibetan. I don't really care. Whatever. I'll go along with it.
Yeah.
And that's how. I mean,
it's
we were
a
watching.
damn smart strategy.
It's very, very powerful, and that strategy is already basically the Tibetan identity is probably going to be erased in the next 50 years, and we already see the beginnings of it, and the end of it will probably be in about 50 to 100 years. And so Africa, it's still relatively early, but it's the same strategy.
Yeah.
So there's not like, oh well, that's a little too much. We don't want to be. The Chinese are willing to like murder their own citizens over like people that speak ill of the president.
Yeah, seriously.
If it's like people that are not Chinese, like it's a very ruthless people that, at some ways, makes them incredible survivors, but also makes it very, very dangerous to be their enemy. So it's a very weird thing to be witness to, and also like, how do you? Yeah. So I mean, I love being in America and the freedom associated with it, but also it's like. This is the history of your people too. This is a very bloody and conqueror's people, and they feel like for 100 years we've been kind of being a poor country that's been very humiliated by the West advancing, and now it's our turn. There's a very confidently ascendant kind of mentality that feels.
Reminds you of Jordan,
How so?
where it's countries like that where if you speak ill,
Yes.
dude, you're automatically on
You're
a
done.
blacklist. You're
Yep.
getting shit shoved
Oh,
up your
yeah.
ass
Yeah.
while you're fucking
It's just
begging for your
gnarly.
life.
Yeah. So that's the short version of it. I mean, there's a lot more. Like, I would love to dive deeper into like one of the things we mentioned earlier in our conversation before the recording was I would love to figure out who the richest and the most powerful person is in the northern colony of Africa, and the Chinese guy up there, and the richest and powerful person in the southern. I want to know each of their stories, and I want to hear them describe the other guy.
Yeah,
It's just-
that motherfucker.
Yeah, that guy. Oh, he's a murdering psychopath and a rapist.
Me, I'm benevolent. I'm great.
Yeah. I'm the nice guy. He was
I'm
just like,
infallible.
yeah.
He
That
said
jackass. Oh, that guy's a total piece of crap. And I'm sure they both have like incredibly horrific stories about the other person. And I'm sure that they sincerely believe it.
Yeah.
You could start the craziest intercontinental beef.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you can do that, or you can just make money. So it's like, all right, you know what? He's so far away. I'm just gonna like make mean like Chinese Weibo posts about the dude, and then like, go back to my counting my billions and drive my Ferrari and murdering the locals or whatever they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Jesus Christ.
Next 10 to 20
Drive
years is
my
going to be
Ferrari,
very
murder
interesting.
some locals.
Literally,
Typical
dude.
Tuesday.
yeah,
Mondays.
yeah.
Mondays are the worst.
Oh man, whole weekend where the body's got to dispose of, throw them in the
Hey, bro.
incinerator.
Mornings like these.
Oh man.
Oh Jesus.
Well, this podcast definitely kills any political career any of us here have.
Oh yeah, for sure.
this video from like.
But
I wasn't planning on it anyways.
I wasn't. I mean, we're not going into politics. Let's be
No,
real.
God, no,
but
no,
at the
terrible,
same time,
terrible.
like at least somebody's talking about it.
Yeah.
Because it's there. It's
Yes.
like totally visible, and I
Right.
feel like nobody talks about this
It's-
shit.
it's
It's
like
like,
the-
oh, did you see that filter on TikTok? You're like,
Yeah.
shut the fuck up.
It's like the news
I
coverage
get
of the Uyghur people.
Oh, yeah.
Remember
Yeah,
that one
I
thing?
was just about to talk
Yeah.
about that.
So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what are you referring to?
Is it Uyghur or Uyghur?
Uyghur.
Uyghur?
Yeah.
Okay.
Uyghur
I've been
is-
saying it wrong this whole time. Uyghur.
So there was two people's opinion, or your opinion. I wanted to ask
Yeah.
about that, the Uyghur situation.
Yeah.
So, are we? I don't even know how to approach that question. Just what do you think about it in
I know
general?
very little about them, so I don't want to have a strong. They're treated like a lot of other people that fall within Chinese territory, where it's like either conform or die. The Tibetans are similar. It's like, okay, well, yeah, you have your Tibetan thing, but no, and so China feels very confident being able to assert itself in these kinds of ways that when they were poorer and less ascendant, they didn't have that confidence. There's even like parts of China that border Mongolia, and they're insisting that all those schools, they used to teach Mongolian. Like, no, we're teaching Mandarin Chinese. You want to learn Mongolian, you do that on your own. All the schools, all the languages, all the bank accounts, anything that's official and part of like legit society is Chinese, and you do your barbarian Mongolian shit elsewhere. And so that is going to create its own sort of. I mean, if you have to learn a language and that's the official language, who wants to learn some esoteric language that only is spoken by the poor people and the marginalized? No one's going to want to learn it, and then that's the multi-generational strategy. Second, third, fourth generation, it's like, well, why even bother? It's the language of the poors, right? Who wants to learn like Navajo?
Yeah.
Mm.
And
Well, I mean, I would. That'd be pretty rad.
you say you would, but you want to devote like.
Well, for me personally, I want to live out in the middle of essentially nowhere.
Okay.
Like 2 to 3 miles away from the nearest airport. Like that's ideal for me.
Okay.
So to learn like the local language, if that is, let's just say Navajo, for
Okay.
instance, I would love to do that.
Okay.
Because if somebody strolls
Yeah.
by and they happen to be Native American, you're like, you just talk
or you can
to
just
them in their
simply talk to him in
native
English.
tongue. Hey,
They'll know English anyway.
Hey,
so
I know he knows English, but hey, how cool would that be? If you just
iOS
flexed on him
Translate,
for a
bro.
second?
Come on.
But it's like think this through. Like you have a finite amount of time. Do you want to spend like 100 hours on Duolingo to know like 15 phrases,
That was my logic. I wanted to learn Italian,
right?
but then I'm like, okay, I have English on my side. This is
Right.
the universal. This is like the
Exactly.
go-to default language.
Exactly.
So why am
Yeah.
I gonna? I can spend my time doing other things.
Dude,
I'd
Right.
still like
Yeah.
to learn it.
You'd like to learn it if it was
Yes.
like some machine like in the Matrix. I know kung fu. If you can download to your brain, sure, that would be a fun. Slot that in, whatever. But if it requires like X amount of actual time sitting in front of it, learning a vocabulary word, rehearsing it, listening to a native person say it, and correct you when you get it wrong. Hours and hours and hours. When you could spend hours and hours leveling up something else,
Yeah.
would you spend those hours? And the answer is
It's
no.
opportunity
Like apparently
cost.
for if you want to learn Japanese, it's like you need 2,000 to 3,000 hours of practice,
Right.
and that's just speaking it with somebody.
That's for anything,
Right,
too.
Yeah,
Right.
For
Some languages
before
are
you can
easier to
become-
learn, but yeah,
Mhm.
Japanese. Some languages you require that level of intensity, and it's like if you have a specific reason why you want to learn Japanese, fine. But if it's like, okay, it's just a fun thing to do, it's like
Yeah, no.
I saw this cool
No.
chart actually where it put different languages into a group,
Uh-huh.
right? And then there's like the level 4, which is the insanely
difficult,
hard,
right.
Right. And it says basically if you come from a native tongue of this language, these languages would sit right in your alley.
oh, okay, so
In
adjacent
terms of
languages,
language.
basically.
Exactly.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
that makes
The
sense.
romance
And then
languages.
like Spanish, English, and whatever was just like in the
French,
same
Italian,
dude.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was just very easy, very
Right.
simple, quick. 1 year you'll
One
have
to
that.
the other, fairly
Yeah.
straightforward yeah. And others are like
very
they're
interesting.
completely different. And
Yeah, and it's surprisingly, man,
yeah,
Arabic
Mm.
is just as complex as the most complex.
Oh my god,
dude.
yeah, probably.
Arabic is-
Maybe
is-
believe it.
It might
a
as
mission
well.
to learn.
I finally understand. Like, I come from a Palestinian household.
Okay.
So my parents, when they speak or like they try to speak their mind or their emotions,
Mm-hmm.
right? there are so many words
Mm-hmm.
that they can come up with.
Mhm.
And then me trying to directly translate it into English,
You're like,
I can't even think of
Dude,
one
and
word.
ways of pronunciation too.
Right.
Oh my god.
the
It's-
subtleties, the granularities of various.
I could
like,
think of
yes.
a close phrase, but
Right.
that's it.
Like
But
if
you know where it falls apart. You know in what
Yeah.
ways it's
Yeah,
like not
it
adequately
just-
translated.
You
like
cannot.
if you exhale
get the
wrong
full
on
effect.
certain words.
Yeah.
Like it
And
might
that's
mean
why
something
I can
else.
imagine, dude. Like, so
Right.
back in the day when people used to cry during poetry readings,
Mm-hmm.
that made sense
Right.
if it was in Arabic.
Mhm.
Right.
Because it was just
The
a straight arrow to your heart, bro.
Right. The level of granularity that they
yeah,
can express in
it's
various things
just
in other
so
languages.
so rich.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's and all that gets wiped out, I think, and that's what I fear about in China is that it's a monoculture that is very much in an expansion phase because before it was in a very kind of defensive position of everyone else is richer than us. We have to like sell cheap manufactured, counterfeit stuff to kind of like, shoehorn in on some white person's racket and whatever. Now it's like, no, we got our own shit. And now we are the one dictating. We are the ones with the gold. We're the ones with the money. We're the ones with the construction companies. We're telling you what's up now.
Yeah.
And there's a generation of like 20-something, 30-something that feel very, very aggressive about the rest of the world. And there's a sort of a sense of pent up, like we've endured a century of humiliation, and now it's time for us to retake the center of the world thing. And the Chinese name for its own country is 中国. It's like the middle country. We're in the middle.
Yeah.
All y'all are just in the side. You're all these side countries. You're the north of it. You're south
We
of
are
it.
the center
We're
of
in
the
middle.
universe.
Yeah.
We're the center of the universe, and y'all are just like wander from like the main HQ.
Now, I'm fascinated with the solution end of the spectrum. Like,
Go.
at least in terms of the U.S. and China specifically.
Yes.
I would assume that there's no bridging the gap because this is a communist regime.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, we can take political action against them. We can put tariffs on them, put some financial burden on them. But then, after that, what do we have other than war?
It's the threat of so it's a complicated. Yeah, it's a complicated answer. There's no easy solution. I do feel like the thing is that because there's so many Chinese people and not everyone is inside China and steeped in Chinese
Yeah.
or there's enough of people outside of China that have very different ideas of what it means to be Chinese. That's where I think the change has to come from. It has to come at some level from within. You can't have an external force because that'll be resisted.
Yeah.
It'll be viewed as an attack by outsiders and the insiders. If you view it from the perspective of let's sort ourselves out, because we talked about this earlier before the recording. That I think my view is that a lot of the conflict we experience is because countries are too large. We have a distant king that's going to issue dictates, and then he's going to send his armed men to come to our little town. Most people, they would prefer, if we have to have a ruler, to have a ruler that grew up in our community, steeped in our values, someone that we've known, or at least 2-3 degrees of separation from. And even if we disagree with them, at least we get where they're coming from. Whereas, what do we have in common with those distant kings? Even in China, the president comes from typically 2 or 3 cities. That's it. All this territory, and yet everyone's from Beijing or Shanghai, and everything is shot through the lens of the Beijing Shanghai perspective. Think of the U.S. How many presidents come from Wisconsin or Nevada? And,
Not many,
right?
You're right.
None. And that's a thing that and so there's that resentment that not my voice never gets heard. I get this fake choice every year of like this rich guy from this faction of rich people and this other guy representing the other faction of rich people, and then we had to pretend that see, you get to have a choice. And I think most people, they would prefer to have smaller regional governments that are beholden just to our thing.
Yeah.
Here's everyone here is a pig farmer or is friends with a pig farmer, and that's what we know and that's what we do. And the president is a pig farmer, and we're okay with that, right? And I think that's the ultimate stable solution, is because even in China, it's a tough thing to be president of a nation in which like a lot of billionaire powerful families actually resent the fact that you're president. You're constantly like on the lookout for assassins, on the lookout for saboteurs that are trying to infiltrate your organization, to spy on you, to humiliate you. Better to have people that are, like Singapore is an example of a successful, largely Han Chinese people that are separate of government from mainland China. Other places, I think, similar. This is kind of heresy for everybody, I guess. But my view is that in the U.S., everywhere, people are better off if we can form smaller, coherent countries that are able to have our own local rulers, our own local customs,
Yeah.
and we can trade with everyone. We be on friendly terms with everyone.
Just
We
makes
just
more
don't
sense
have
to
to
me.
100%. Yeah. If
we
you
don't
travel a
have to
lot, you'll see
You
it.
can travel, and then
Yeah.
but you can go back to a place. And if you don't like where you're born in for whatever reason, then yeah, go to a place that's more congruent with your values.
Mhm.
If you feel like you'd be happier in a foreign country, then go to that place. If you want to be in a super traditional place where everyone has kids and married at 25, then there are places like that. Go there.
Yeah.
I want to be a hedonist. I want to do lots of drugs. I want to have threesomes or whatever. It's like there's places
Tinder
like that too,
society.
right?
Swinger party.
But
New Mexico, Nevada. It's
Well-
one of the two.
right. So that's and to not impose your preferences onto others or insist that it's got to be at the government level down. Everyone's got to live the way I prefer to live.
Yeah.
It's a pretty arrogant way to go through life, I think. And so that's I think that's the peaceful solution, is encouraging people to think regionally. Because if you're forcing everyone to live under the same banner, you can have a lot of miserable people. And if people are miserable, then they have to be forced to obey at the point of a gun.
Mhm.
You're going to have people from outside the regional areas, armed men that force you to say, no, you're going to do it this way because we say so from the capital.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, look, the Hunger Games, like the capital has all the power, and all these. Every single district hates the capital, but they're forced to play along because they're the ones that have all the resources and guns.
Yeah.
It's true.
Whereas if you just simply have your own
Yeah.
regional, even if it's poor, there's pride and whatever, and just being like, I grow my own food. I'll never be able to afford, a fancy blah blah blah. But everything that I produce is mine.
Yeah.
I don't take any handouts. I'm not taking on anyone's charity. All the food I grow is from my own hand, and I'll never be rich, and I'm okay with it because
That's
everything
everything.
I have is stolen.
Imagine being so distant
Yeah,
that where you're like, there's no way. Like, I'm so out here
Yeah.
that I can never be controlled.
right,
And then they have control anyway.
right.
It just,
How
it
resentful
really,
you'd be, yeah.
it really fucks with you because you're a whole separate community. You're a whole different country, technically, at that
Yeah.
point.
And that's
But you're a puppet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
that's-
you
that's-
still get.
that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
And that's an idea that I think a lot of people. I've met people from China, and so I think they're usually, because I was born in Taiwan, they always assume I'm going to be some like Taiwan zealot and whatever. And it's like I get why you would want to think that way, but here's my, and usually I can at least go, I haven't thought of it that way.
Mm.
And that's the beginning of, hopefully, I can only talk to so many people at once, but the value, I think, of things like social media and whatnot is that if you can present these kinds of peaceful alternatives, I'm not saying violent overthrow or whatever. I'm like, let's let people rule themselves in more autonomous regional zones.
Mhm.
I think that's a it's not going to get shut down by any sort of like, oh, you're spreading subversion. But it's also, I think, the most peaceful way that people can organize themselves and not be subject to distant kings and be forced to obey edicts that have to be enforced at the point of a gun. But we'll see. I mean, the humans do have a warlike tendency. We are all still the descendants of warriors and rapists and whatnot.
Hard-headed
too.
mofos.
So the likelihood of it happening is not zero. I'll do everything I can to talk people down and reduce the probability of that, but that's all I can do. Ultimately, my archetype, the one that I lean hardest on, is businessman and salesman. So I have a much better salesman archetype. I'm a much better salesman than I am a warrior. So I prefer. I want things to be my wheelhouse. If you force me to fight, I'll fight, but I won't be good at it.
The warrior of sales.
Well, buy or die.
I love that.
I always thought that I guess the solution
Yeah.
to China, if you want to even call it that, was a fundamental change of how the people view politics from the ground up, which is in a sense kind of what you're predicting, right?
Yeah.
Like more autonomous, almost like city states.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, if you want to, maybe like the how the U.S. runs it, where we have our own states, but we're all under one government. However, there's a bigger or greater importance of autonomy for the city states, right? Then I started to think about it. So I did a little bit of research into China's history and stuff like that, and I went back to the first thing I thought of was Tiananmen Square, and I'm looking at all the younger Chinese people, and I'm like, your parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles, like they fought for democracy. And it feels like it's kind of just getting thrown out the window a little bit as time goes on. I mean, like, people were taking bullets in the streets, standing in front of tanks.
The funny thing about that is that because the Chinese government controls the education, several years ago, I was dating a woman who lived near Tiananmen, and I asked her, like, so where were you when that thing happened, when the incident in Tiananmen Square happened? And she says, oh, you mean that time that all those students attacked those soldiers?
Oh,
Are you
Oh my
serious?
God.
That's the education that 1 billion Chinese people grow up with, was a bunch of students
my God.
ganged up and
Propaganda.
attacked those. Yeah. and that's their understanding of history. Unless and that's what's in all the history books, and that is what that. And this is like there are people with living memory contradicting it, but that's their education. And unless they go off the reservation, I mean, because oh yeah, you'll hear other stuff, but that's just like anti-China propaganda. That's how that. So they're already primed to say, okay, no, someone's going to tell you that's not true. Well, here's their defense. If you ever know anyone who's been in a cult, you know that this is actually very common. You'll have a story, and you know the story's going to get contradicted by outsiders. So you already have a preloaded story to at least give the NPC something to say when that contradictory narrative is presented. So this is the thing. That's why there's to control a people, you control the education of their history. If their understanding of history is on your terms, then they will behave in a fairly predictable way. There'll be the rebellious X% that's going to like want it to set and kind of do research on their own. But most people will take exactly literal value what's presented to them when they're like 12, 13, 15 years old. Most people, right? So if you can control that, you pretty much have them.
It's a good point.
Dude, that makes you wonder.
Yo.
Reading through our books that are just sent by us from our school districts.
Yes. How much of that is
How much-
propaganda?
A lot of it. A lot of it.
Columbus
Bro,
section.
Oh
what
my
the hell?
God, are you kidding me?
There's a lot of I thought about this as well. Like
Yeah. How do we like
We should-
we are kids, bro.
You know, we
like,
need to
how do you even
we need to grab a history book from like a high school.
Dude, I am
right
so
now.
down. You
Yes.
know
We
what?
need
I'll
to
grab
look-
my little
yeah.
brothers.
We
He's in middle
also-
school right now.
What also would be interesting, and this is something I've been curious about, is there's a ton of textbooks that I don't know where they are now, but textbooks from the 1960s, 1940s.
Mm-hmm.
What and then compare the difference between textbooks from like 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago versus right now. The problem is a lot of these books do get destroyed, and so that's it. The history of history is erased, and that to me is really the meta history, right?
Yeah.
That to me is far more interesting than whatever
Yeah.
the actual thing is being taught, because it's like, all right, you're gonna have whatever
Yeah.
it be, but you're seeing it actively now. People are like tearing down statues and whatever.
What did we upgrade this time? You know?
Right. And each firmware patch, basically, we're not told what's in the patch. It's like download.
Yeah.
Do you download? Okay, download. We're just constantly downloading patches. We have no
Yeah.
idea. Is it downgrading our phone? Who the fuck knows? Because
That's a
I
good
feel
point.
like that's what history. That's what like stories are. They're basically like they're software patches.
Yeah.
There's crowd control patches that are being pushed out from a central location, and you can refuse the patch for a while, and then eventually your phone performance will degrade.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't have the current patch of like woke
culture.
woke culture 5.0, you're gonna not fit into this culture. You're gonna be constantly fighting. They're gonna keep telling you update. Your updates are past due. What's
Yeah.
going on, man? It's the current year.
Yo, in order to proceed, you must up.
Exactly.
Yeah, you must
Gotta
upgrade.
upgrade
Take down this Caucasian statue
Exactly.
immediately.
You remember
Exactly.
fucking Sony
Oh, I-
PlayStation used to do that.
Oh wait, sorry. The statue thing. There's something that always cracked me up about it because, for example, like in certain southern towns, I forget which one it was exactly. There was a statue of Robert E. Lee that
Yeah.
got taken down and
Yeah.
thrown into a river or
Yeah.
some shit.
Yeah.
And people were like, "You can't take down that statue." And I'm like, "Why?
Well,
Why? Well,
good. What are your thoughts?
so people are like, there's a historical stance to it. The
Yes.
fact that he wanted black people to be enslaved,
Uh huh.
But that
and
too
then
is
you're like, well, what about the military history? He fought for slavery.
But at the same time,
Like-
you're not advocating for slavery.
just
It's
simply-
just a mark. It's a
it's a
symbol.
mark, and also
understand.
it's a sign of reconciliation. That okay, you fought a bloody history, and then at the end of it, typically when you have an unsuccessful rebellion, every single person who's considered a traitor now gets executed, and their names are erased from history. Like that's the typical history. Here in the U.S., it's like okay, you know what? We fought about it. We're done with it. And Confederate soldiers were treated as U.S. veterans, and they were given veterans benefits into their death. And that's an interesting gesture that no other unsuccessful rebellion has ever done for its unsuccessful rebels. Usually it's, okay, you tried to
Wow.
fight us,
Really?
fuck you, you're all dead. Right? So now so they got pensions. Your U.S. soldiers get pensions if you serve in the military. And so it's like, okay, look, I know it's like, okay, it was a hard decision. Like, all right, look, we're done with it now. We buried the hatchet. Let's treat each other as brothers again, and we're even going to treat you as a elevated member of someone who fought honorably, if from their perspective the wrong side, right? So that's the other way to view it. And
I guess in a lot of cases with the Civil War, for instance,
Yeah.
like I feel like a lot of people just kind of got caught up into something that they didn't want to be involved in the first
There's a
place.
lot
which
of
is
that as
usually
well.
what most of war is,
Yeah.
or at least the soldiers on the ground,
Right.
right? They're like, "Fuck, I had to do this."
right, and so from that perspective, I'm sympathetic toward it. I think that it's a and if you talk about like people with dodgy history. There's a gigantic ass statue of Genghis Khan who's raped a lot more people and murdered a ton of people.
A lot.
Enslaved like way more people than the multiple Souths, all throughout Asia and like the Middle East, all the way to like the eastern edge of Europe. If you want to go by that standard, go ahead. Go to Mongolia. There's like a giant ass statue.
We dare you.
Try to tear that shit down. I have
gonna
a
get
feeling
the Great Khan,
right? So it's
the Great Khan, bro.
But that's the thing. I feel like that part of our understanding of history is that yes, there are these, and at the time that was considered an honorable thing, and to be able to in the lifetime of these soldiers, not like retroactively we get that. It's like while the injuries are still fresh, we're like okay, look. We finished this thing. Let's just at least shake hands and be like done with it, as opposed to continuously punishing them after they lost the war, which I think is a racist gesture. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Also, I just thought about that. They're trying to tear down racist history, but at the same time, they're not going to let you fucking forget about it.
Right. It's this weird. Yeah. This is.
It's such a weird
It's a very
dichotomy.
weird.
Yeah,
it's super weird.
It's weird.
So
I
I don't. I feel like I live in the South. It's like it's not something that is. It's short term, like kind of gratifying, but it buys you a lot more. You're reopening a bad wound for no good reason.
Mm-hmm.
There's not you don't are people nowadays are their lives improved because this statue of a dead dude from 200 years ago is gone. And whose life is improved now?
It does nothing.
It does.
I mean,
it doesn't. Right?
Yeah. Don't you think parents probably walked past that shit when they were younger and they're like, this guy. No. Hold up. Then they talk about like the piece of or the racist history behind it, and they say like, oh, you don't want to be like this guy, something like that.
But how many people walk by the statue?
No. I would
with
argue
Genghis
most
Khan?
people don't care about the statue.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like it's just
Most people probably don't even acknowledge it.
Right. So that's the thing. It's not. It's a curio for those who care about history, and if you do care about history, you understand that most people who have statues have like some dodgy, horrible thing about them, and it's like that's part of it. And then there's
like people that are trying to tear down the Lincoln statue,
right? Now it's like a reflexive hatred of anyone who's white. So that's the thing is, it doesn't end with that. And exactly, there's no. That's why think of if people have a beef with like Genghis Khan, and think of there's literally millions of descendants of people he's raped. If they all just gather, oh man, we're gonna go there, we're gonna. It's like, right? It's what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? And
yeah, it's true.
And so, at some level, I feel like it's a short-term catharsis, but also it normalizes a lot of kind of toxic behaviors of this idea that once we tear this down, then we're gonna have this post. You're seething with anger as you do these kinds of things. I'm gonna destroy these monuments to. I mean, it. In what way have any poor person, any marginalized person, any descendants of slaves, in what ways have their lives been improved by this giant and it's not just like we're gonna remove it carefully and put it in a museum somewhere.
No,
it's a violent
booted
thing.
That shit off of there.
It's destruction. It's this big ugly scar in the middle of the way. It's being dragged. There's like if it was gonna be done, it's done in an extremely destructive way that just rehashes a lot of unpleasant negative emotions. And if the whole point is to heal people, it's the opposite way of doing it. It's like, okay, well, look, maybe we don't honor him in the public square, put it in a museum, explain the history of it, blah, blah, blah. We'll place him with something who's, a little more neutral. And then it's decided by a committee. It's removed carefully and respectfully. It's, everyone has a say. Okay, look, I'm a descendant of slaves and I think it'll be da-da-da. Well, you get a vote. Everyone gets a vote. And then we agree upon something. And some people are going to be happy and some people will be dissatisfied with it. But we can all agree this is a better option. Like, done in a civil manner, I think that would be a good compromise. This would
be a much better approach.
This is just the orgy of like a angry emotional outburst.
Yeah, it's the classic like push and pull of like logic and emotion.
Right.
Okay, sure, you can react emotionally.
Right.
But are you responding logically? Is that
going to help like 50 years from now?
Exactly.
So 50 again, think long term. 50, 100 years from now, like, oh yeah, we tore all this stuff down and that was the beginning of our peaceful utopia. It's like,
It's like the sensitivity links with emotional, and it's just stop. Just stop. Just think for once.
But people, I am kind of amused by that dynamic. The white guy was saying, "Yeah, it's okay to throw down a statue." We're like, "No, it's fine."
No.
No. The people said, "No, it's fine." The white guy said, "She's like, whatever."
No, hold up. Here's the deal.
I just want to observe that as a meta observation.
Hold up.
Right?
Hold up.
Go on.
Am I saying the tearing down of the statue was the right move? In my opinion, yeah, probably. However, was the approach to it the best one that could have been taken?
Okay.
No. I'm with you on that one. There should have been some civil discourse, a couple town meetings here and there.
Yeah. That's the thing.
I think it's a complete waste of time and energy.
Well, I think it's important.
It does nothing.
It's important to know the history of it so you don't repeat it.
Yeah, of course.
It's like you want to take the pride of actually accomplishing something.
Right. But it's also the whole point is it was erected with the understanding that, look, we had a horrible fight, but these are the honorable people that have stood on both sides of it. And making a tribute to an honorable enemy is, I think, ultimately a very powerful gesture of reconciliation, as opposed to, oh, these are subhuman filth that need to be like erased and whatever, right? That's usually what happens to like people that attempt rebellions that get crushed.
Yeah.
I mean, history, right? No one who builds a statue to unsuccessful rebels? Nobody. Nobody.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Their names are stricken from history. Their whatever castles they own are all like seized by the crown. Their children are like executed, and they're, you know, like that's the usual fate. You try to rebel and you don't succeed. Like it's like you are erased. This is the ultimate cancel culture. This is modern shit. No. Oh, you think you got modern cancel? Oh, no. Medieval cancel culture is much worse.
Think of all the rebellions that have happened. We have no fucking idea because nobody wrote about it.
Exactly. They are just absolutely like that. Oh yeah, this castle's always belonged to this guy. Like, wait a minute.
Hold up. No one charged
shit
that
scratched out. Wait, no. In the stone. I think I see this other dude's name in that.
Wait, hey, don't worry about that shit.
Is that whiteout? Right? Clear as fucking day.
Yeah.
Now I have
a title history search on this castle. Wait a minute. This used to be owned by Lord so-and-so.
Interesting.
Now there's one more topic that I want to cover.
Go.
I want to be respectful of your time and make sure that this whole thing, especially concerning that it's popular right now, this whole like cuties documentary. What is it? A documentary or no? It's not.
I thought it was a series, but no. Some people say it's a movie.
It's a movie.
Yeah,
is it a movie?
It's not a series. I don't think it's
a.
I don't think there's multiple episodes.
Thank God.
Okay.
Just shoot myself, please.
Season by season. Can't wait for season 2.
No. So with the outcry, I don't
Yeah.
think it's going to happen. But yeah, go ahead.
Now I know this is a rabbit hole, but like, and you have some very interesting points to bring up with with this whole pedophilia thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess what's your
what a lead in. Oh, yeah.
You got some shit
it's
to
awful.
say about
That's all I have to say about it. It's awful. And it's
makes a
disgusting. And that's.
But at least the thing that I mean, it's terrible, of course,
Yes.
but at the same time, I'm confident because most people don't approve of this shit.
Right. If you look on YouTube right now, the trailer for it has like 1.5 million downvotes and like 43K upvotes.
It's like, I wonder who the pedos
Someone in
are.
the comment was like, "Oh, like I guess there's 43K pedophiles on YouTube." I thought the number would be higher, but okay, well, you know.
My God. Yeah. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just think it's degeneracy. What else am I going to say? Like, it's just,
It's
a longer
it's not
conversation about other things that I think are. There's a lot of related things that I think, but it's a symbol of what's going on in our modern contemporary culture that before I think would have. In a previous era, it wouldn't even gotten this far.
Yeah.
Oh God, that would have stopped at the production phase.
Now it's like I feel like there's a term people say called like compliance testing, where it's like we're going to do something to see how people react to it, and then okay, well that's too far, so we're going to take a step back. And here's the thing we want to push, and it's like, well, I want to well that was too far, so we're going to dial it back, and then try it again maybe in a couple of years.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I mean, remember the NAMBLA was a thing that existed in the 1970s. You know. To those unfamiliar, and NAMBLA is an acronym for the North American Man-Boy Love Association. Oh, you didn't know about this?
Oh, wait. Are you talking about like MAP people?
No. That's the modern rebrand of it. There's an organization called NAMBLA, NAMBLA, which was
NAMBLA.
It's the North American Man-Boy Love Association.
Wow.
Which was an advocacy organization that was started in the 1970s.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. So again, this stuff goes way back. And so they would, and of course, at the time, the gay community was like, no, you're making us look bad. Don't associate with us, you know. And so they were like, no, we don't want you flying your banners in our marches. Stay the hell away from us because you're ruining our brand. That's the 1980s gay community's attitude toward NAMBLA. Now it's like, well, we're not going to like openly throw you under the bus. We'll kind of like, yeah, you know, whatever. And that's why things are where they are now.
Oh, they totally throw them under the bus. Sorry, continue.
But it's like that at the time it was very aggressively anti, where now it's kind of like this whole like, well, you know, you're as long as everyone's consenting and whatever. And that becomes sort of that marginal culture shift. Whereas back then they were the ones that were like pushing the absolute and getting lots and lots of pushback. But people that openly identified in that they were already deeply into that world, and so they didn't care.
I'm just trying to understand it from the perspective of Netflix. Like,
Yes.
okay, are they just doing this because they're on the extreme side of pushing tolerance,
Yes.
so they
That's
can't
part of it.
see the? I mean, I'm gonna say the word, the evil behind
Yes.
this.
Yeah, I think
Like,
so. Well, they see the evil and they embrace it. That's the thing. The entertainment industry, again, long rabbit hole conversation, but
yeah,
I think a large part of it is just now it's been hijacked by extremely evil, manipulative perverts, and so that's why entertainment is what it is. Before, think about entertainment from like 100 years ago. The things that we think about as like lore and folklore, those are all that generation's version of patch updates.
okay.
This is the behavior that we want. This is behavior we tell everyone is heroic. This is behavior we consider contemptible, right? And that's it's social programming wrapped in this like entertaining bundle, and then we feed it to the masses.
Yeah.
And people say, "Oh, well, that's heroic. I want to be considered a heroic person. What do I need to do to be considered heroic? Oh, I need to rescue the helpless. I need to stand up for justice. I need to be honest. Contemptible behavior. Liars, thieves are considered like villains, and so it's like, okay, well, I don't want to be one of those guys, so I want to be one of the good guys." And that story blasted to millions of people will shape the behavior of the millions of people that hear it. Nowadays, what's being blasted to now billions of people?
Yeah.
What's considered heroic versus what's considered contemptible and villainous, and that to me is, I think, the most.
Yeah.
Again, probably a separate podcast, but I'd love to have
Yeah.
a whole deep dive
Yeah.
on it. But that's
point
the
is,
short version.
Point is, we don't tolerate perverts
Yeah,
or
yeah.
pedophilia.
Oh, fuck that.
We individually don't, but clearly
Individually don't,
societally,
yes.
Yeah.
it's become like we're being tested of like, oh, how much can they put up with? How much can
Yeah.
Put that shit back.
Yeah. I still remember. It started with South Park too, when it
Yeah.
really was out there. Where they came up with the hashtag cancel South Park.
Yeah.
And every episode they were pushing it farther and farther
Yeah.
and farther.
Yeah.
But because they are South Park,
Yeah,
they got
were
away
able
with
to
it.
get
It's
away
their
with
brand
it.
of
Yeah,
comedy.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like priests and boys and shit. Like what the fuck,
But
But yeah,
well,
you're right. It does date back. It does date back definitely. And freaking what was it? They used to have taboo Friday nights or something.
Was
where
it?
at the movie theaters it would be like
What was
a,
it?
What are you talking about?
yeah. Well, what's labeled as taboo? Incest,
yeah,
that kind of stuff.
okay.
And
haven't
yeah,
haven't
they
been
would
to
have
the movie
movie
theater in a
nights where
while,
it's just
so.
like,
When is it? I mean, who goes to the theater to watch porn? I ain't paying $16.
Listen, there's some weird
Well,
fuckers
there are
out there.
weirdos. There's
Hold
that's
up,
an
hold up.
industry.
If you're going, you're getting the popcorn.
yeah. Well,
You're
they're
getting
defense.
Skittles.
Think
and
about
now
it,
you got
bro.
all this fucking shit in the theater.
People that go to porn and buy
Yeah.
Skittles.
Where a TV wasn't common in a household,
Right.
and it's the 19.
Oh no!
Why the fuck would you say that?
Yo, who the fuck communally enjoys porn?
They don't. It's all like individual seats.
Yeah.
And
Is
they
it all
all
gonna
have
be like-
plastic covering in front of
It's
them
all
too.
COVID
you know?
seating now. You get your own private booth.
I was hoping to end on a higher note than this, but maybe.
Well, that's the 2 a.m. podcast.
We speak about anything and everything.
Oh
over
my
here.
God.
Oh my god.
Wait, sorry. One last thing about
Yeah.
the cuties,
Go.
though.
Sure.
Oh dear.
How fucking weird is it, the timing that it came out?
How do you mean?
Of any other time in history that they could have dropped that shit,
Mm.
it was right when one of the world's biggest child sex traffickers, at least that was partaking in the
Yeah.
U.S., many
Yeah.
parts of Europe,
No coincidence.
he died.
Yes.
Some people think allegedly.
Yep. Yep.
And then now his girlfriend slash
Business manager / COO,
slash child
Yes.
child sex trafficking.
Yes.
Yeah.
madam, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now she's
Is
starting
it-
to sing about all this shit, and they're like, "Oh, we just happen to have this really fucked up, weird ass show about children that essentially want to dance like strippers."
Yep.
It's not a coincidence,
And-
bro.
Yeah.
And
all
they're
of
like,
this.
"Oh, now's a perfect time. Just drop this right here.
drop it right now.
See how
it'll
they
be fine."
feel about it."
Yeah.
With the MAP movement, minor
Yeah.
attracted people, which,
Ish.
by the way, do you know that started as a meme on 4chan?
Well, oh.
Yeah, MAP or minor attracted people.
Yeah. Person. Yeah. I
It's
heard about
or
that
person,
expression.
excuse me.
Yeah.
It started as a meme on 4chan,
and
and they're
embraced
like,
it.
"Oh, we made our own flag," and they're like, "Yeah, we have all this pride," and then it actually got swept into mainstream by like
Yikes.
actual pedophiles, and now it's a movement.
Now it's a
They're
movement.
like, "Fuck,
Wow.
we fucked that one up really bad."
Well, my view is that I think it was probably already there. They just latched onto it as a
Yeah.
sanitized name that because other things have already been. It's if you're doing something contemptible, you have to constantly change your name, right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
So it was previous names have been like the Nambla brand has been like associate with like 1970s, like creepy old dudes with boys or whatever. So I was like, oh, it's a new name. It's a new name that hasn't been corrupted yet. Eventually, it'll be like everything else, and they'll have to find some other horrifying, untouched thing to attach themselves to. But on a happier note, I think I'm tremendously glad to
Absolutely, Kai.
connect with you guys.
Thank you,
and
man.
love to
Thank
come
you for
back.
coming.
Have a
Thank
lot
you
of fun.
so much for coming.
We'll
man.
definitely have
We'll
you
do this
back
again.
as well.
It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, heck
and
yeah, man.
can't wait to hear the response. So you post this on YouTube? Or how
Yes,
does
we
that-
do.
Yes.
YouTube,
Hey, you-
Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You know where to find us, people.
We'll also put all of your links in the
Yeah,
description.
Dynamite.
All of
Thank
his
you so
links
much.
in the
Find all of
description.
Alrighty.
This has
Kai
been-
Chang, everybody.
Thank you so
Hey,
much.
Kai
Cheers.
Peter Chang.
Yeah.
Peter Chang,
Episode
brother.
51 of the 2 a.m.
51.
podcast.
Yes.
And you know where to find us: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor.fm, and YouTube. Please subscribe, like, and comment. Leave us a note, and we'll see you next time.
See you next
See you next
time.
time. Take it easy. Cheers.
Peace.
All right.